I've never been one to claim to be an ITK, but for perhaps the very first time, I've heard about some important Tottenham Hotspur news pretty much firsthand via people who were in the room. And that's that the rumours about the Saudi stadium naming rights deal and investment in the club would seem to be true, and that an announcement will be coming relatively soon. I'll be discussing that news and asking what I think are some important questions about it all in more depth in today's episode, along with bringing you the latest Tottenham transfer news and all the build up to Thursday's North London derby in Hong Kong. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Do give this video a like if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber for daily Tottenham transfer news throughout this window, and of course all the news and views from White Hart Lane, or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, if you call it that, or what could soon be known as the Aramco Stadium. So just to give you a bit of intel, late last night, I had a call with someone who I can best describe as a very trustworthy source. And it's somebody who is very close to stadium naming rights deals. And the story is that the Saudi investment, the story that came out maybe 2-3 weeks ago, TalkSport did a piece on it, and a lot of rumors kind of gathered around all of the Spurs content creators and a few journalists as well. Well, the stadium naming rights deal, apparently, according to my source, is done. It's going to be £25 million a year for 20 years, and it is Saudi Arabian investment. Quite possibly, the stadium will end up being called the Aramco Stadium. If not Aramco, then one of the other big Saudi Arabian companies. Now, how do you feel about it, guys? That is £500 million coming into the club. That is probably why we were able to, or trying to, sign 2 players for £115 million in 24 hours just a couple of weeks ago. However, the reason that deal hasn't been announced is twofold. Firstly, because also the Saudis are trying to put proper investment into Tottenham Hotspur, possibly the first piece of minor investment towards buying the club outright further down the line. The idea being behind this, as Daniel Levy has stated a number of times over the past couple of years, that Tottenham are able to spend money. The revenue is big from the new stadium, from the club. I think we're now the 9th richest club in the world in terms of the league tables and the stats, but we are not a cash-rich company. ENIC doesn't really put its own money in. However, a minority investment at this stage from the Saudi would allow us to be cash-rich, put money into the club, not just that sponsorship deal of £500 million, but more investment as well, allowing us to spend more money on what is needed on the pitch, increase our wages, spend more transfer fees, improve the first team. So this deal is now only being held up by the fact that the legals of it are quite complicated, because the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia are the 80% owners of Newcastle. So what cannot happen is that the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, they cannot be seen as the actual owners of Tottenham Hotspur. That wouldn't be allowed. That wouldn't get through the fit and proper persons test of owners for the Premier League. So from where I'm sitting, I think what basically needs to happen is that a front needs to be put on this investment, this sponsorship deal. And that will be what is being kind of decided by the Saudis at the moment. And when I say a front, what I mean is, the suggestion will be that Tottenham are not, this minority investment is not from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. It will be from a separate entity, which to me, I think most likely will actually be created by the Saudi government. Aramco is the state oil of Saudi Arabia. So, it's all pretty much the same, but they need to get around the legalities. I guess you'd call it, similar to the way, I'm afraid to say, that the Chelsea have found a way around the legalities of profit and sustainability rules. You have to find sister companies, you have to find a way to sell things to yourselves, etc., loopholes, etc. And that, I think, is what is happening and what is trying to happen in terms of getting this deal done. So how do you feel about it? I'm going to talk to you about how I feel about being owned and sponsored by a Saudi oil company, which of course is part of the state. I've talked about this a few times. I'm very conflicted about it. I actually really like the fact that we've been run sustainably, that we've grown from, 20 years ago, a club that were take last season apart away from it, but a club that were kind of in relegation battles when ENIC took over, that hadn't been doing well, where Alan Sugar hadn't been a good chairman, and before him, Irving Scholar had nearly driven Spurs into the ground. I like that ENIC have grown it sustainably. They've kept to the rules. However, of course, when you look down the road at Chelsea and see the way that they're basically cheating their way to buying every single player, every single young, exciting talent, that they have sold hotels to themselves, that they've sold their women's team at an inflated value, that, like I said, they find loopholes around every law. There is, of course, a part of me that says if you can't beat them, join them. You have to find a way. However, to join them just by basically getting involved in sports washing does leave a bad taste in my mouth, I have to say. Manchester City were the first team to do this. Abu Dhabi bought them probably, it's probably 20 years ago as well, nearly. And now they have 115 charges for allegedly breaking the rules. And I'll tell you what I think is going to happen with Manchester City and those 115 charges. And this is led by the fact that it was supposed to have been done and dusted by kind of Christmas last season. I think Manchester City will end up getting a huge fine and no points deductions. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because, again, it's like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Do you know what I mean? It is tempting to say that. 115 charges when Nottingham Forest and Everton got one charge each and got a points deduction because Manchester City are able to afford the best lawyers in the land and numerous lawyers, and wrap everything in red tape. You can just tell, in my opinion, that in the end, the Premier League will just try and be done with it and say, all right, slap them with an enormous fine, 100 million, maybe even 200 million. And Man City will complain and be like, that's disgusting. But then they'll be like, secretly, be like, well, it's just a slap on the wrist for us. That's no money whatsoever. So that is what brings me back round to Saudi Arabia, kind of investing in Spurs and just thinking, what chance do we have as Tottenham fans really of ever seeing proper success, by which I mean lifting a Premier League or a Champions League, unless you kind of get involved in the similar kind of arts? It's small, I have to say. And I will look at clubs like, I hate to say it, but Woolwich, they haven't gone down the sports washing route. They have been bought by American investment funds, American kind of sports investment funds, the Cronkies. And they have kind of, to some degree, done it properly, but they've also spent a great deal of money. It's taken them a long time. Do I think that ENIC and Daniel Levy realistically could ever do that? Is Levy capable of making the right decisions to do that, or of investing the money? I just don't see it. So that's why I kind of think there is a part of me, although it's not, it's not the majority part. I still just want us to do it properly. I still want it to be done the right way. But there is a part of me that thinks, I know, put it this way. I remember how I felt on that day when it looked like we were getting Morgan Gibbs-White and Kudus through the door in one day. And I was like, that feels really good. And I know that not everybody, but a lot of people feel the same, because people watching my videos went up massively. Spurs fans, I think, for the first time in a long time, certainly financially, felt like, oh, we can compete here. Something's changed. And I think that's what that sponsorship deal, is bringing, because I don't think we would have offered to spend 115 million pounds in one day had Daniel Levy not known that this sponsorship deal is coming in. Now, one thing I also think is probably the reason why Daniel Levy is willing to go with the Saudis rather than the Qataris, and the Qataris were in conversations with Daniel Levy just a few months ago, is that the Qataris wanted a clean break. They wanted to buy the club 100% outright and ask Daniel Levy to step down. Whereas I'm guessing on the basis that the Saudis have done a deal, or look like they've done a deal, is that Daniel Levy is going to be allowed to stay on, certainly in the short to medium term, as chairman. How do you feel about that? Do you think there's a chance that Daniel Levy will be willing to spend this money in a way that he's not willing to spend ENIC's money? That'll be interesting to see. I think another question to ask is, we've just employed Thomas Frank. He's only been in a month or so. But if this deal gets over the line in the next, let's say, month, 2 months, is Thomas Frank's job going to be under threat? Will a minority investment from Saudi Arabia mean that they'll want to take over some control of sporting decisions, or at least have a big say, kind of akin to Sir Jim Ratcliffe taking 25% or 20% of Manchester United and taking over all sporting decisions from the Glazers? Will they be happy with Thomas Frank? Will they want a bigger name? Will they want to kind of make ripples in the waves on the first day, similar to what happened when Abu Dhabi took over Manchester City. And the first thing they did was bid for basically everyone, Berbatov, Messi, and in the end they got Robinho, just to try and make waves, to show everyone that they were serious. Is that something that the Saudis might want to do at Spurs? And then finally, in terms of questions about it from my side, we've had the change for Tottenham protests. We've had the anti-ENIC, anti-Levy protests for years now. Is this now going to change? And we're going to start getting different protests from a group of Spurs fans who don't want to be involved in sports washing. I think there's every chance that may happen. And therefore, the chances of Tottenham kind of ever being a stable club whose fans are all pulling in the same direction seems to be quite small. But, like I said, I think as ever with a football team, the be all and end all is, how are the results on the pitch? Will we be able to get better players in? Will we be able to see better football and win more trophies? It's not about winning a trophy now, because of course we're the Europa League champions, but will we be able to win more and better trophies? And it has to be said that I think with Saudi investment, the likelihood is that we'll be bigger power players in the game. We've got everything set up because of Levy and ENIC in terms of the size of the ground, the revenue it brings in, the way the club has grown, and now it just takes more cash. And maybe that's what this Saudi deal will bring. One thing I'll just say before I move on to the Tottenham transfer news is, of course, although everything I've heard is that the deal is done, do not doubt that there is a possibility, of course, that Daniel Levy will find a way at the last minute to ask for more money or something like that and screw it up. Because everything that I hear from the same people that I've heard about this deal and plenty of other people within the game is that Daniel Levy just has this addiction to last minute changes of deals, like not even having a word. You know how a lot of business people talk about, deals being their word and then not going back on them. Daniel Levy seems to be the direct opposite of that and seems to always want to find ways to just get a little bit more. So let's see whether he manages to actually go through with something. But all the reports that I've heard pretty much from the horse's mouth is that we are going to be called, or the stadium is going to be called the Aramco Stadium, or it'll be Aramco or one of kind of two other major Saudi companies, and that there will be a fair bit of investment going into the club, and it will happen soon. All right, guys, let's move on to a little bit of the rest of the Tottenham news. Once again, please do press like on this video if you haven't already. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do press that subscribe button and the notification bell for my daily Tottenham content. Like I said, bringing you all the Tottenham transfer news across this window. And strong reports yesterday that Tottenham are pushing to sign Leicester's Bilal El Khanous. It's believed the Moroccan could be available for around £25 million, although some rumours suggesting he has a £22.5 million relegation release clause. And of course, Leicester did get relegated yesterday. Let's see what happens there. I did a video yesterday about how I feel like Tottenham at the moment are being used heavily by agents and other clubs to drive up valuation of their players. So I'm at this stage, I have to say, a little bit like pulling back on believing in a lot of Tottenham transfer rumours. Let's wait and see until Johan Lange comes through in the dark for some of these signings and we actually see the player holding up the shirt. Because as we know from just a couple of weeks ago, even a here we go from Fabrizio Romano and it's done from David Ornstein doesn't mean anything with Spurs at the moment. Thomas Frank did a lot of did his press conference yesterday before the North London derby. I'm sure a lot of you saw on social media Expressions' question to him. How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. Expressions was given a place to ask questions in the press conference, which I thought was interesting, that fan creators, fan content makers were given that opportunity. Expressions asked him a question, which of course was hilarious, saying, oh, your nickname is Thomas the Frank Engine. Well, what that means actually is Expressions came up with the name Thomas the Frank Engine, I think, or at least he's the only person I've seen making videos about it. He asked Thomas Frank how he felt about that, and Thomas Frank just kind of batted away, said, yeah, it's fine with me. I just wondered, and I like Expressions. I don't know him personally, but obviously he's a brilliant creator. He's a genius, really. I just wonder, if I was given that opportunity to stand in front of Thomas Frank and ask a question, I think I would have been more tempted to go down the route of, something akin to, under Antonio Conte, Spurs played with a three at the back and fans got slightly frustrated because of what they deemed at times to be the boring nature of the play. And then under Ange Postecoglou, we went the other way and played a 4-3-3 fully adventurous. How are you going to switch around different formations and try and find a way for Spurs to be more balanced and more pragmatic and concede less goals, but whilst also remaining attacking. That's the kind of angle I think I would have gone down if I was given that opportunity, but maybe I'm being too cynical. And of course, putting myself in Expression's shoes, his audience, they want to see him being funny and stuff like that. So I can totally get it. But yeah, I don't know. That's just the kind of question I'd probably like to ask. Anyway, Thomas Frank was asked about transfer discussions with Daniel Levy. He said, in general, we are constantly talking about transfers, of course. It's the transfer window. We're in the market. We're still looking out there. When asked about the North London derby, I think it was maybe Ali Gold asked him, you're playing your first North London derby, even though it's a friendly, how do you approach it? And he said, I think it's a great challenge. Beside being our biggest rivals and the first North London derby outside the UK, it's also right now one of the best teams. I must say, unfortunately, they're one of the best teams in the world. And we also need to be honest about that. In that way, it's going to be a big test, but it's more than a test against Arsenal. It's not only a friendly. Of course, it's a game we will do everything we can to win. How do you guys feel about a North London derby in Hong Kong? It's at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. I'll do a watch along for it, I think, on my channel, so do keep an eye out for that. I'm a little kind of laissez-faire about it. I think probably the wind has been taken out my sails a bit since the friendlies at the weekend against Wickham and Luton. I just felt it was drab. And obviously we've got some injuries. Solanke is out injured. And of course, Udogie is out injured. Actually, there was a report yesterday that Udogie might be out for 4 months. But late last night, he did an Instagram post with a picture of himself with the words 4 months ? And then like laughing emojis. So I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as long as that, which is a relief. Thomas Frank was asked where he'd like to strengthen his squad. He said, that's something I would like to keep private. Of course, we're aware of where we want to strengthen the squad in general. Of course, we are looking. He was asked about Morgan Gibbs-White and Sonny. He said, right now, Sonny is here and I'm very happy for that. He's trained well. I said in the last press conference that he's showing great character. He played the last 2 friendlies. He's in the squad. He'll train today. What I'm focusing on is he is a Tottenham player. So totally ignoring the Morgan Gibbs-White situation, which you can kind of understand, I guess. Frank was also asked about his wide attacking options. He said, I think first and foremost, it's important that we have depth in the squad. Richarlison, who I see more as a striker that can play to the side. Sonny can play both. Matthias Tell is a winger, but he can also play as a striker. We need different skill sets. The perfect player is difficult to find. So you need players that run in behind, players that can go 1-against-1, players that hopefully can score goals. And that's a big part of it. You need players that can press. Some of them have ball carrying skills. Some of them are very good at pressing players. So that's it. I'll be interested to see Matthias Tell hopefully start tomorrow afternoon. I think we need to really blood him. It's looking more and more like it to me that Sonny is going to be leaving. Therefore, we need to kind of pick up our options on that left-sided forward line. Brennan Johnson started there at the weekend. He looked kind of slightly more involved in the game on the left-hand side. I'd say Kudus to me is a shoe-in on the right. So at the moment, I'd be looking to get lots of minutes into Brennan Johnson on the left and Matthias Tell on the left. He was asked more about Sonny. He said, I think everyone knows that Son has been one of the best players at Tottenham in the past decade. I think he's been hugely successful from the left wing. I also think he's had some fantastic games down the middle as a number 9. So it's important to have players who can play in more than one position, and it's about having your best players on the pitch and available. So the thing about Sonny is that he'll always score goals, and it's just about getting him in those situations. I agree with that. I think Sonny is still an elite finisher. It's just about getting him in those positions. I have to say, with Solanke injured at the moment, he didn't train in yesterday's open training session. I just think Tottenham are incredibly light at number 9. I'm guessing Richarlison will start at 9 tomorrow. Hopefully he'll put it about a bit. He'll like to get in a scrap with some of those Arsenal players, I'm sure. But we do feel light at number 9 at the moment. Frank was asked about Mikey Moore being given permission to hold talks over loan. He said, it's very important. Mikey is a big talent. I'm really excited about his future here at Tottenham. I think for all players, but especially young players, they need consistent first-team football into their bodies. I think if we can get the right option, we will agree to it. I've said I'm not sure about the Scottish Premier League for Mikey Moore, but there was a graph that someone put up from Transfermarkt saying that if Mikey Moore does go to Rangers, he'll immediately become the highest valued player in the Scottish League. So I guess he will have that thing where he's kind of deemed to be one of the most important players, and that will be quite important for him. Maybe he can get some minutes in the 10 position for Rangers as well. Mickey van der Ven was asked about Thomas Frank when he did his interview. He said, the first couple of weeks have been really good working under the new gaffer. The first meeting I wasn't there because I was with the national team. He just showed us his visions and how he wants us to behave on and off the pitch. They're the first things that are really important to him, and he will get into the group now. And Van der Ven was also asked about the Rolls Royce. We've got the monster, Luka Vuskovic. He said Luka's only 18 years old, but what you can see from how he behaves on the pitch and off the pitch is he's a really talented football player. He has a lot of qualities, and I think he's shown in the last 2 friendlies that he has a lot of big and strong points where even our centre-backs can learn from, sorry. He's done unbelievably well at this point, and hopefully he can do way more for us, and hopefully you can see more from him. I do wonder whether tomorrow Frank might be tempted to play a 3 at the back with Romero, Van der Ven, and Danso probably to start, with Vuskovic coming on. That would be to kind of try and combat, Arsenal's strength in the forward line. Realistically, they played together a long time, and they might even have Gyökeres as an option tomorrow. Saka obviously always a danger. Be really interesting to see whether they try and do something a bit different. I have to say at this point, not to be too cynical, but I would be very surprised if Spurs got a result against Arsenal tomorrow. What with the fact that we've only made 1 senior signing and they've made 6, and obviously, they've come second the last couple of years. But for me, it's not really about the result. I just want to see some green shoots of improvement, some desire to not get absolutely pummeled tomorrow. And, hopefully, I often am a person who makes big predictions and gets them wrong. Hopefully I'm completely surprised, and Thomas Frank can do for Spurs tomorrow what he did for Brentford a number of times, which was put Arsenal under a kind of pressure that they didn't enjoy, play in a way that they really didn't like to face, and we can turn them over. Like I said, I'll do a watch along. It's tomorrow afternoon, 12:30. So do tune in from the office, from wherever you are during your lunch break, and we'll go through and watch that game together. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do press that like button on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel, and you can become a member. Only £1 a month. All the details of how are in the description box below. Enjoy your Wednesday, guys. Come on, you Spurs.